It means the ministry's interfering at Hogwarts.
You're not going mad. You're just as sane as I am.
I must not tell lies.
You seem to be laboring under the delusion that I'm going to, what was the phrase? Come quietly.
Hey everyone, welcome to Hogwarts, a podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Hogwarts, a podcast. We are covering Chapter 24, Occlumency. It's a much shorter title than the last time our guest was on. Elizabeth is back with us.
That was like, 16 words long or something like
that? St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Injuries.
That's too long of a chapter.
That's a lot of words.
But hello, everyone.
This is a one-word chapter title, which I am a fan of. We are back to our regular guest program. We hope you all enjoyed the belated binge crossover episode that we had last week.
I enjoyed it. I thought you guys had a really good conversation.
Yeah, it was nice to have Zach on. He's got a really cool Harry Potter podcast over there, so check him out. We are getting into an interesting branch of magic.
Yeah. In
this chapter, and we haven't really gone into it in our pre-episode prep about what our opinions are on it, but stay tuned for that.
Wait, maybe I'm gonna have something that's completely against you, like normal, and then it's gonna be like, oh my gosh, debate.
Maybe we'll just have a full-blown fight on the podcast,
or we'll just completely agree, and then it won't be that interesting.
Or we could agree. That could happen too. So basically, this chapter is broken down to a couple of different things. We got our last moments at Grimmauld Place for the Christmas holiday before they go back to Hogwarts, and there's an interesting interaction between a couple of adults in this. I mean,
interesting is one way to put it.
Interesting, yeah. We get an interesting interaction between Sirius and Snape at the kitchen table, and then we get another appearance of the night bus as we take the night bus to get back to Hogwarts.
Yeah, who had that on their bingo card as coming back?
I will give her credit. She's finding unique ways to get them to school in different ways. This is like the 5th, 6th, 7th different way she's gotten them to school. But so we see that. We get a return to Hogwarts, which immediately means we get a Harry Cho interaction. And then we get the actual Occlumency class with Harry and Snape, which we will delve into quite intensely. Grimmauld Place.
Yes.
We get Sirius becoming a little bit grumpier.
Christmas is over, so that means the vacation's ending soon.
Yeah, the delight of having everyone over is now dimming a bit as everybody's getting ready to leave Grimmauld Place.
Yeah, the only one who isn't leaving is Creature, because apparently he was lurking in the attic, so...
And he seems happier.
Yeah, which Harry is very suspicious of, but Sirius is just kind of like, he's here, whatever, cool.
You know what no one's happy about? Except for maybe Molly Weasley. Molly Weasley is very, indifferent towards this whole thing. She just calls up, hey, Harry, Professor Snape is here to see you. And everybody's like, what?
Talk about taking you off guard. You're on vacation, and now your teacher's being like, come downstairs. I have to talk to you about this new class you have to take. Like, no, I'm on vacation. Go away.
It's a little... can I just state for... one thing that I'm just realizing now, Mrs. Weasley's here. And presumably everybody is here. Then we get into that meeting where Harry goes downstairs and Sirius is waiting at the kitchen table and him and Snape are like anti-face-off, where they're staring in different directions and they're bluntly ignoring each other. But then we get a re-entrance of the Weasleys later.
Kinda.
Did they leave when Harry went in and then quickly came back?
I feel like all the kids were hanging around in their rooms and maybe Molly
quickly darted out and came back?
That or Arthur apparated or...
Because how much time did we really spend having this conversation? I can't believe it was a very long time.
No, I would think probably either she apparated or he Food Network or something popped back and then... Well, maybe not.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Maybe not the Food Network, because then that would be connected.
There's some time shenanigans here that I'm like, wait a second, how did this?
I mean, it's magic. We have magical transportation. Maybe they took the night bus.
Recovering from the hospital. Let's get him on the night bus. Let's open those bandages right back up again.
Yeah, no, but he does go downstairs to talk to Professor Snape.
Professor
Not
Snape.
just Snape. It's Professor Snape. Show some respect. But you're right. Yeah, like Sirius was just looking at the ceiling. He wouldn't look directly at Snape. He kept raising his voice whenever Snape would talk, and Snape was doing the exact opposite with like lowering his voice, almost like a whisper. But they're not happy with each other.
They're not. And I think Sirius mentions it later. The quote is, "Oh, it's just two old schoolboys having a chat."
Yeah.
Which it does get kind of down to the root thing. Obviously, you know, they're going, look, no one is blameless here.
Right.
They're both throwing barbs at each other.
And to be fair, in their history, their childhood, like, you know, the trauma that makes them now hate each other, Sirius wasn't innocent. Snape wasn't innocent. So the two of them coming head to head. Of course, they each see themselves as the better of the two. But Snape doesn't want to be there as much as Sirius doesn't want him to be here.
Right. I mean, you get the line of Sirius being like, you know, this is my house. You don't get to give orders in my house.
He's not wrong.
He's not wrong. He's not wrong. But Snape, and by the way, Snape acknowledges that. And he's like, all right, fine.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Also, and then he starts throwing barbs about like how Sirius is hiding away in his house while other people are out doing work.
Malfoy's recognized him in his dog form, so therefore now you have a ready-made excuse to never leave again. Be in the safety of Mama's house.
Snape is very good at targeting his words to cut the deepest.
Yes.
He's very, very good at it.
Yes, he's very skilled. Which, I mean, includes him calling Sirius a coward, which seems to hit him the hardest. And my question for you with that was like, do you think coward as an insult hits Sirius even harder because we know bravery is associated with Gryffindors and he's the Gryffindor of his Slytherin family and he's literally in his Slytherin family home. So it's like an extra, I have to be different from them. If the Slytherin head of house is calling me a coward, there's like the extra bite to it.
I think that's definitely a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
All of the house stuff I think plays a part, but I don't ever think Sirius is sitting there thinking like, this Slytherin is calling me out for being, you know, a coward and I'm a Gryffindor. I don't think he's that, but I think the inherent underlying qualities of each house are at play here.
Like a subconscious
Kinda,
thing.
yeah. And I think Sirius obviously views himself as a very competent, capable, willing participant if he was called upon. Mm-hmm. And I think the idea that someone is ignoring that potential worthiness gets to him because he is on the sideline. I mean, it's like a star athlete who feels like they can contribute to a team and they're riding the bench.
Right.
And it's frustrating.
Right.
And it's like, this is a waste of my talents. This is a waste of my brain. This is a waste of everything I can potentially add.
And I think he recognizes, like, this is the right move for him to be benched, but it just sucks.
If you're Dumbledore, it has to be hard because you know Sirius is capable of carrying out many different jobs and abilities. It must be hard for Dumbledore to sit a talent like that on the bench.
Yeah.
And not be able to use him. And quite honestly, I don't know if there isn't ways that you can use Sirius. I think there probably is ways that you can get him out of the house. He survived on his own
all
for
last
months
year.
and months and months and months and months on his own.
Do you think part of it might be just the fact that they need someone at the Black House? You know, as like, this is the order, like, headquarters. Someone should be there, especially since we do have Creature there. You know, like a loose thread. So someone should always be there keeping an eye on it.
Yeah, but I feel like this is a misfire by Dumbledore. I feel like Dumbledore has to read the room, per se, and be like, this is only going to cause problems. Like, if Sirius has to be at the house, fine. But there's things I firmly believe there are probably things you can have Sirius do to get him out of the house and be productive in some way, shape, or form. Sirius is locked down because he's a fugitive in the UK.
Right.
Why can't you have him go international?
Yeah, send him abroad. He can talk to some people.
Recruit wizards, recruit creatures, recruit whatever you have to do abroad. That maybe he's less of a wanted man. I'm sure he's still...
Well, we know he went abroad last year. I'm sure he talked to some people over there, like where those tropical birds were. Get some allies.
There's got to be a use for him, and I wonder if this is just a massive miscalculation by Dumbledore not to use a wizard of his abilities in some way. You really can't... You're really telling me, like, you can't find a use for him?
Right.
I feel like that's a failure on you.
Right.
But anyway.
In any case, the fact that this conversation between these two men ended with Harry physically putting his body between them to separate them from, like, attacking each other is absolutely insane.
Did you get the vibe that this back and forth between Sirius and Snape mirrored Harry and Draco?
100%.
I feel like they literally devolved, the two of them, devolved into 15-year-old boys sniping each other with petty, shallow, meaningless barbs. And just riling each other up to a level that gets ridiculous.
With Harry having to be the adult in the room.
Yeah.
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 They do get interrupted, though, because you're right. Arthur is home. He is cured. He's never going to deal with muggle remedies ever again. So says Molly. We'll see if he keeps to that or not. But he's home, and now Snape is out of the house.
Yes, but before he leaves the house, he drops the news that the whole point of his arrival is that he is carrying a message from Dumbledore that Dumbledore wishes Harry begin occlumency lessons. And what is occlumency? It's a magical defense of the mind against external penetration.
Right.
And...
Which, I mean, even if you just break down the name occlumency, as J.K. Rowling usually does with all her, like, terminology and stuff, it's a combination of the Latin words mens, meaning mind, and occluder, which means to close up. So it literally translates to close up the mind. These
lessons are to begin, like, immediately. Like, Monday at 6 p.m. Like, literally the next evening. Obviously, Snape is delivering this lesson because, well, Snape's delivering this message because he's the man doing it.
Right, and I love that his reaction and Harry's reaction to this news is the same of, like, this sucks, I don't want to do it.
This is not... He basically... Like, obviously, Harry is like, I'm sorry, a what?
Right. This is not how I want to spend my Monday nights.
And Snape is like, I don't want to do this either, but here we are. I want to get into... Snape later on tells us that this is a particularly rare circumstance, that a student is learning something that's not a formal class at Hogwarts. But I do want to, like, ask the question, if there are lessons that students want to particularly learn, or that...
Like an independent study kind of thing?
Yeah, or that a teacher or headmaster thinks is appropriate for that student, can they pick up little side lessons?
I would hope so, because that sounds really cool. Like, I mean, like, if it literally is like an independent study, you're not getting tested on stuff. It's just literally learning, which is supposed to be like the point of school. But if it's aimed and directed at you, then I would imagine the effort behind it would be like, you want to do it. Of course, Harry doesn't want to do this, but I think it'd be interesting to learn. I don't know. We can get more into it in a bit.
So we get to the next day. They are leaving for Hogwarts, and they decide that the best way to do this is to take the night bus.
And it's not a happy leaving. I mean, Harry has this, like, feeling like, you know, something's off. I don't want to go. I don't want to leave Sirius behind in this gloomy house where he's alone with his thoughts and creature. Like, and then plus going back to Hogwarts means just returning to Umbridge. So, and no Quidditch. Like, life just kind of sucks right now. I don't want to go. Before he leaves, though, Sirius does give Harry a gift. Not a Christmas gift. I think this is just inspired by Snape coming. He gave him some object that he described as being the size of a paperback book. It's all wrapped up. And he said that it's a way for him to know if Snape bullies him with these occlumency lessons. And Harry immediately is like, okay, cool, thanks. And then thinks to himself, I'm never going to use this.
I feel like that's a short-sighted thought. Like, to not even
open it.
Yeah, I feel like that's short-sighted. Or at least not ask him about it. Like, hey, how does this work?
Right.
Or,
I get they were like getting rushed out the door, but my own natural curiosity would be like, I want to open the package at least to see what it is before I determine if I'm going to use it or not.
I understand this is a potential opportunity for a massive miscommunication where they just leave things unsaid between them. Like, Harry choosing not to say, like, hey, be careful, like, keep your head down. I know Snape got you, but, like, just chill. And Sirius not maybe explaining this gift at all, so that Harry just thinks, like, oh, I'm going to provoke him to leave by using this.
Right.
Which I don't think, like, as rash as Sirius can be, he's not dumb.
No, he's not an idiot.
So Harry buys into the hype. He buys into that, Sirius is an irrational dude. I might, get him out of the,
I think Hermione's in his head too much with that.
Kinda. Yeah. It's Hermione's partially to blame because she puts that image of Sirius out there quite a bit. And so does Molly, and so does a lot of people. And while it's technically true, there's a point to where Sirius is like, okay, I'm not gonna like throw everything under the bus just so I can.
Right, I'm not gonna put myself in danger because I'm your godfather and I want to be around for you.
Yeah, it's a potential miscommunication just based on the things left unsaid. But anyway, you also get an interesting interaction as Harry goes down and he sees Lupin and Tonks kind of whispering. And then as
he said the minute the trio entered the kitchen, they all immediately stopped whispering.
Per Order of Phoenix law. As soon as a child is within earshot, stop talking. Yeah. Anyway, Lupin and Tonks are the ones escorting them to Hogwarts.
Right. Via the night bus.
So we get another night bus mention, and Ron mentions that he's never been on it, and he would like to.
Well, he's a fool, because the night bus is not a very fun ride.
No, but it's convenient. Convenient. My goodness, that is a asset to just be like able to throw out your hand, and then if you're truly stranded, this thing is a lifesaver. Yeah.
But then you get on it and you're like, oh gosh, this driver doesn't know how to drive, and stuff is constantly being thrown all over the place.
Hey, they get you from point A to point B. They do their job.
Well, my point being is I hate it in the movie, and I think it's awful. They have that little shrunken head that's so unnecessary.
Shrunken heads are a part of the magical world.
Hey, I have nothing against shrunken heads. I just saw
an odd statement to say.
I just saw Beetlejuice. I went to the theater to see the musical. Loved it. Loved the little shrunken head dude that's in the afterlife there. All for it. But I think this little shrunken head in the movie that they have hanging there just with his commentary, so unnecessary as a choice. There's so many choices in the movies that, like, they could have kept it. It would have been a tiny detail that just added a little extra magic to the story. But no, we're going to use our own imagination. And we're going to toss in, no.
You're completely ignoring the fact that they actually treat the night bus remarkably accurately. Like, they do a very good job of depicting the night bus.
I still hate the shrunken head. There's no mention of that in the books.
So one minute detail destroys the entire well-done depiction of the night bus.
I'm not saying it's a rational opinion. I'm just saying it's my opinion.
Fair enough. So anyway.
Ron changes his opinion on the night bus too, so I think he's on my side.
Well, it's not a pleasant ride, but
No,
it still gets
it's not.
Anyway, we do get another Stan-Harry interaction. As Stan lets Harry know, like, oh, I've been reading a lot about you in the paper.
Right.
I kept talking to him, like, he didn't seem like he was all that crazy when I met him that one time.
I just love the fact that Harry thinks to himself and recognizes he's like, I don't think Stan really cares about me one way or the other. He's just impressed by the fact that I was in the paper.
Probably.
Like wow, this man is he's celebrity struck by me. It's uncomfortable.
You know what I find amazing is the fact that this night bus pulls right up to Hogwarts, like right up to the front gates.
I love how Harry notices all 3 levels of the bus, like looking out the windows, and I don't know if he thinks that they're looking at him or not, but I'm like, these people probably all went to Hogwarts, right? So it's kind of like hey, look, I went there. I went to school.
Probably a little bit. It's kind of amazing that it just pulls right up to the front gates like that. And I think back to Chamber of Secrets when they couldn't get onto the platform and they decided to take the car
if
instead
only
of...
they had put out their hands. And
understandably, Harry didn't know about this yet because it's in Prisoner of Azkaban that he learns this. But if they had just waited 2 seconds for an adult, they probably would have gotten the night bus there. But
better just get dropped off at school by your parents. What a concept.
So we return to Hogwarts, and Harry says it's a rough day because obviously he started out with potions again, and Umbridge and Divination, I think, are all of his Monday classes.
Monday's not a fun day.
Monday's not a fun day. And now you have the extra class, which Snape has told him if anybody asks about this, just tell them you're taking remedial potions.
Right.
They'll understand.
Right. Which is like, again, Snape is really, really good at those cutting comments.
Here it's particularly good because it's cutting, but it's also, you need the cover.
Right.
And say what you will, it's a fair cover.
Right.
Because if you've seen Harry in Snape's class, you know they have an issue. However, the cover then breaks when would Snape really love to have Harry in it? Like, that's where it starts to fall apart.
Or like the fact that he hasn't necessarily offered this extra class.
McGonagall's making me do remedial potions with Snape just to get my grade up.
Yep. He has one happy moment, which involves Cho. He sees her, and she's... I mean, that alone is enough. Although, to be fair, he said when he saw her, his stomach leapt uncomfortably, which I get. Maybe it's supposed to be like, oh, I got butterflies in my stomach. But I feel like uncomfortably is a weird adverb to stick there.
To be fair, he's also been pestered all day by DA members being like, when are we doing this? When are we doing this? Can we do it tonight?
Right.
Can we do it tonight?
He's
so he's mentally prepping for that to be the conversation being had right now. And he's like, I don't really want to tell Cho that I'm taking remedial potions.
See, I could see that, but I also took it as a little bit like, wow, a reminder that like of what happened between them before break, which I really don't think he's given a second thought to all of break. Whereas she has probably spent the vast majority of her break thinking of and reliving the memories of making out with him in the room of requirements, and then feeling guilty because she was crying and being like, well, how is he going to react when he sees me again? And Harry's just like, nope, didn't give it a second thought whatsoever.
All right, time out. Let's... In Harry's defense here,
he's had a lot
going on.
But you would know that, like
she wouldn't. But I mean, there's reasons for him not to like.
No, I'm not in any way, shape, or form being like Harry should have given Cho a second thought over break. I mean, he had a lot going on. I just think that Cho probably has been thinking about it, and that's why she was trying to hint at this Valentine's Day date. But for Harry, when he sees her coming towards him, it's almost like oh, shoot, I remember what happened before we left. That was the last time I talked to her. Now what's she going to think? It was like very quick, like panicking.
Think about it this way. I don't know if you or any of our listeners have had that moment where you have like a first kiss with someone and then you don't talk to them for like 2 weeks. Like, that's an awkward length of time.
He should have texted. Sent an owl.
Sent an owl? He should have owled her? Is that what...
Wait like 2 or 3 days and then be like, hey, that was really fun in the room requirement. Can't wait for
Can you imagine Umbridge intercepting that owl being like, ugh.
No one wants to read that. No teacher wants to read that. Keep your love life.
The point is, that's a long gap after a first kiss to just have a lack of communication between the two participants.
Right, which I also think is why Cho, when she came in, she wasn't flat out like, hey, go out with me on Valentine's Day.
Again, I'm going to defend Harry here.
Mm-hmm.
Other things on his mind, and he got there eventually. He figured it out. He's getting a little bit, his brain is firing a little bit faster in this context now, where he's like, oh wait, she's trying to ask me out. Oh man, okay, and then he got it done. He got it done.
I just think maybe if Cho had more confidence, which I think was undermined the minute Harry was just kind of like, oh, so you want to know about, like, you know, he wasn't treating to be like, hey Cho, how's it going?
Yeah, he wasn't enthusiastic.
Mr. Smooth. So I think that undermined her confidence right away. But if she had been more confident, she could have just been like, hey, guess when the next Hogsmeade visit is? Valentine's Day. The romance holiday. Hey, remember how we were kissing? Wanna go out with me?
Well,
make it so obvious.
No one wants that.
Harry might need that.
No, I thought she was appropriately hinting. She dropped the Hogsmeade date on Valentine's Day. That was the hint. That was the boom. Here, I'm laying it out for you.
Which, speaking of, who determines these Hogsmeade dates, like, for their visits? Because whoever did, like,
it just fell on a Saturday.
I can't imagine Filch was like, it's a good idea to do Valentine's Day for these
No,
kids.
it's probably not Filch.
Like, was it Dumbledore? But regardless, like, I mean, if you're a romantic, then you could be like, yeah, I'm giving the kids the opportunity for, like, a fun little date. But if you're more of a cynic, you're like, these kids are going off into town without teacher supervision, and they're going to have their Valentine's dates. All the bad things could go wrong.
Why do you think there are so many teachers in Hogsmeade when they go?
True, maybe it's that.
There are teachers everywhere. Anyway.
Or maybe they're having dates. Who knows?
So we ultimately get to this occlumency lesson.
Right.
And we learn a lot. There is a lot of info dropped here.
There really is. I mean, right off the bat, we know there's an opposite of occlumency.
Legilimency.
Yes.
So we find out that the reasons that Dumbledore wants these lessons to be had is that Voldy is particularly skilled at a discipline of magic called legilimency.
Which is the ability to extract feelings and memories from another person's mind.
So Snape goes into this really interesting description of what the mind is, because Harry drops the word mind reading and Snape rolls his eyes and like, that's a muggle way of looking at it. Your mind is
not that far off.
Your mind is a much more complex. It's not a book that you just open and read.
Right.
You really have to work. You have to search.
It makes me think of like the maze that they have in Goblet of Fire. Like your brain, you have to navigate it. You have to do all the different turns, and there's different obstacles in order to break through to actually get to the memory and read the thought or whatever. But Harry, I mean, after his description, he's like, I don't know, it still kind of sounds like mind reading to me.
Snape then goes on to say, like, the Dark Lord almost always knows when someone is lying to him.
Right.
So to be able to shut that out, he says those skilled at occlumency can shut down feelings and memories that contradict whatever lie you're trying to tell.
Right. I imagine it's very much like, yes, you shut down the accurate thoughts and you supply your own imaginative version of like an alternative that Voldemort would then be convinced by. But that'd be terrifying to, you know, try it against him. See if you succeed.
Well, we do get the note, you know, as they're getting dropped off at Hogwarts, Lupin, you know, does his handshakes and goodbyes and whatever, and then he leans into Harry and is like, hey, I know this isn't ideal, but Snape is really, really good.
He calls him superb.
Superb at occlumency. Take these seriously.
Right.
I think Harry does go into this lesson a little bit more willing to learn. And Harry has, for good reason, he goes into this lesson suspicious of Snape. Like, wondering what the exact purpose of this is, why is Snape doing it, all of that kind of thing. And to Snape's credit here, he answers the questions.
Yeah, he has a lot of questions, which I think in part he's like, oh, I'm finally getting answers. Okay, so tell me, like, why did this happen? And wasn't this a good thing for me to be able to see into Voldemort's mind? Like, I saved Arthur, so why would Dumbledore want to shut that down? And Snape, to his credit, is very careful with how he answers these questions, which I think is a difficult skill, especially since this is like, he has insight into Dumbledore that Harry doesn't, that clearly Dumbledore doesn't want Harry to know yet. So you can't reveal too much because we know Harry. Harry is always digging for more information and does things irrationally sometimes when he doesn't have that information.
There's one particular thing that makes Snape pause and really think about his words.
Mm-hmm.
But I think before we get to that bit, this interaction between Harry and Snape, when Harry's asking questions and Snape is responding, I think this is actually one of the more productive, positive, and positive interactions between the two characters.
100%.
Where Harry, at some point, whether it's his second or third or fourth question or whatever, starts to be like, oh wait, Snape is actually giving me what I want to know?
Right.
And then he stops being...
He's like the first adult so far that is actually answering his questions, other than Sirius when he wanted to know what the Order of the Phoenix was.
But my point is, Harry starts this antagonistically. And I think at some point, he stops being antagonistic and is genuinely just curious. Mm-hmm. Because Snape is now giving him info, so he stops being, angry asking the questions and is now just
passive-aggressive snark?
Kinda, yeah. And now he's just having a conversation, trying to figure out this info.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a really important interaction between the two.
I would agree.
So we also learn really quick, because obviously Harry has questions about the night that all of this happened, and Snape is like, the reason you need to learn this is because Voldy is now aware.
Right.
He is aware of this connection between you. Harry starts to think he can get to me here, obviously.
He might try and make me do things.
And then Snape gives his own little Hogwarts a history lesson, where he says, time and space matter.
Right.
Time and space matter in magic. Also, Hogwarts itself has a litany of ancient protective magic and spells and charms surrounding it so that its inhabitants are inherently protected.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea that even Voldy, as powerful as he is, he can't get to you here being so far away.
Right.
And then he gets to that point where eye contact is essential for what he's trying to do as far as legitimacy goes.
Right. But because Harry is Harry and a special boy, as you always say.
Very special boy.
Very special boy. Eye contact isn't necessarily a thing here. And whenever his mind is relaxed, aka sleeping, then he's been able to slip into his mind without realizing it. But the problem is now he knows. And since Voldemort knows, it's a really good idea to close off that connection. We don't want Voldemort in your brain.
We get through all of the, the preamble as it is.
Snape is putting memories into the pensieve, and he doesn't explain anything about which memories he's putting in or what he's doing, but he does that with no comment, puts it to the side.
Then pulls out his wand.
Yeah.
And then hits them with the Legilimens spell, and it takes Harry by surprise, number one, and then you just get this flash of memories going through Harry's mind.
Well, because all Snape really said was, you're going to use similar reflective skills as you used for the Imperius Curse.
Well, he says specifically, I've been told you have a particular aptitude for throwing this off.
Yeah, so similar to that. And go. And it's whoa, I wasn't ready.
Well, and I think, by the way, Snape is chiding Harry throughout this entire thing of Potter, think about it for a second. Even you can't be dumb enough to not know this or X or Y or Z. But then he does have I've been told you have a particular aptitude for that.
In terms of the memories, though, that flash in his brain, he said there's jealousy of Dudley when he was 4 or 5 years old, watching him ride a little bike. There was Ripper the Bulldog chasing him around, the Dursleys refusing to call him off, being told that he would be in Slytherin by the Sorting Hat. Hermione is a cat back in the Chamber of Secrets. The Dementors closing in on him. And then Cho about to kiss him. And he was like, no, you're not seeing that one. And that helps him get through the spell.
So, gets him through the spell. He realizes that he's like gone down to a knee or both knees or whatever. And
he did a stinging hex on
Snape is like rubbing his arm and is like, did you mean to do that?
Mm-hmm.
And Harry's like, no.
Yeah.
And Snape is like, okay, that's what I figured.
Right. But he said for a first attempt that was not as poor as it might have been. He actually gave him a compliment.
It's 2 compliments in like the span of a couple of pages there.
I know. Anymore, and I feel like he'd keel over.
But that's what I'm saying.
What's wrong with me?
That's what I'm saying is like this interaction, up until about literally right now, that interaction was very positive.
Mm-hmm.
Snape ends up saying, quote, repel me with your brain, and you will not need to resort to your wand.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, this has to be where it goes, because if you're against Voldy, and you're trying to just tell a lie, you can't
whip out your wand.
Yeah, he'll just kill you. So you have to be able to do this.
I don't need to read your mind. You're just dead.
Yeah, I mean, you have to do this as covertly as possible.
Right.
Otherwise, it's a moot point.
Yeah.
So he says, clear your mind, Potter. Let go of all emotion.
Mm-hmm. Close your mind to like all thoughts, all feelings.
And all Harry's like, you're attacking my mind. I hate you.
Right?
Like,
not following directions.
I'm nervous because you have a wand pointed at me and you're telling me to close my eyes when you have a wand pointed at me.
Have you ever tried to follow Snape's advice?
I have.
How'd it go for you?
So ultimately, Snape's homework to Harry, and there's one thing before he gets to the homework, but we'll get there.
Okay.
But he says, for homework, rid your mind of all emotion every night before sleep. Make it blank and calm. And in that aspect, to your question, yes, I have tried that, because sometimes, and I know some of our listeners have, commented to us about how sometimes they listen to this podcast because they have anxiety or, insomnia or whatever. And thank you for listening. But sometimes that happens to me at night, and if I just can't get to bed, or that anxiety pops in, and all I could think about is like some stupid thing I said in 4th grade that made people think I was weird for 5 seconds.
Yep.
Something like that. And that's the only thing running through my mind. So I will try to be like, okay, take a deep breath, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Like, just think of black. Like, just go black.
Go blank, yeah.
In my head, and just be like, okay, just focus on the fact that it's clear, it's blank, it's calm. I'm successful in doing that. The trick, however, maintaining it. How long can you maintain that before your brain kicks back?
Yeah.
And I think that's partially the issue here, is like, that's fine. But if you're trying to hold this occlumency thing for an extended period of time, that is remarkably difficult.
It's a lot of repressing those emotions. Every time I get insomnia, I always think of like, okay, Snape said, clear your mind. So then my mind immediately goes to Harry Potter. So I don't clear my mind. It's a problem.
So really quick, before he gets to the homework part, there's a key sequence in that second round of occlumency.
Oh, the one that really unnerves Snape?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because he gets into the memories where Harry's walking down a corridor, and I think it's Arthur says, turn left here or whatever. And then
Harry starts yelling.
Harry snaps out of the memory sequence, and he looks at Snape, and it's almost as if Snape pulled out.
Yeah.
Not Harry stopped
Harry didn't stop it, yeah, because he said he was yelling like, I know, and Snape's like, oh shoot, what's this?
Yeah, Snape pulled out and was like, what was that? Can you explain that? And he tells him it's the Department of Mysteries, and then it clicks into Harry's head like, oh, I know where this is now.
Right, and he says, what's in the Department of Mysteries, and Snape is very careful with his
This is the first time Snape, because Snape's been fairly open this entire time, and this is the first time Snape has to measure his words and really consider them carefully.
And he basically says how, like, there's lots of things in the Department of Mysteries. None of them concern you. Let it go.
Which is a fair and good response, really, from his point of view.
Right.
From his point of view, it's a pretty solid response.
Right. Not satisfying for Harry, though.
No, I think Albus would approve of that response.
Probably.
But yeah.
But yeah, he gave him his homework, which Harry's, thrilled about, but he felt very, like, weak afterwards, which makes sense. You had your brain attacked, your mind attacked, and he said he doesn't really like Occlumency all that much.
Yeah, so we do have some more to talk about Occlumency, and we will do that in the spoiler section, because we're kind of running along here in the non-spoiler. So we're going to dive a little bit deeper into this whole Occlumency thing. We're going to talk a little bit more about Snape and how he handled this whole thing. But before we get to the end of the chapter, we also had an interesting moment as Harry gets back to, first the library, and then to Ron and Hermione in the common room. We get Fred and George demonstrating their new magic.
Yeah, their headless hats.
The headless hats, which even Hermione is like, actually, that's kind of impressive.
Yeah, because he was like, it's an invisibility spell, but how do they maintain it on just this small area, but then have it affect just the one area, and it can't last all that long. It's an interesting charm, and Harry's just like, oh my gosh, I can't, I need to go to bed. What do you think Nearly Headless Nick thinks of these hats?
I don't think he has any thoughts other than, I wish I could just eat food.
I feel like he's probably like, I don't like the idea of them being able to be headless when I can't be headless.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, that's probably his thought 99% of the day. So I don't think that changes much.
Either have a head or don't have a head. Don't go in between.
So Harry goes to bed, and then before he even gets to bed, he falls over and just feels this maniacal laughter.
Right.
And he feels happier than he'd been in a very, very long time. And then I think Ron slaps him awake.
Well, he said that he realized he was also laughing maniacally, which he wasn't intending to do. He just thought he heard it, but no, he was physically
Hermione
doing
sent up Ron to check on him, which was wise.
Very smart on her part.
Wise. And then let's not go over the fact that I think Ron hit him to wake him up. I'm pretty sure Ron hit him.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then Harry just tells Ron, this is bad. He feels real, real happy. That's the chapter.
Yeah.
So before we get to the spoiler section, I just want to shout out a commenter on Order of the Phoenix, Chapter 14, Percy and Padfoot, Los_Shelby, who gave us a comment on that chapter. She says, quote, I have a few cats, and the connection between Filch and Mrs. Norris is way beyond a normal connection. I've heard rumors that she's part Kneazle.
Oh, so this goes back to our conversation of, is the Filch Mrs. Norris connection
correct,
crazy or not? And I said,
she goes,
cats and their cat owners know each other very well.
She continues with, same with Crookshanks.
Yeah.
End quote. Thank you, Los_Shelby, for that comment. If you stick with us in the spoiler section, we might discuss your thought a little bit more.
Might, or will definitely.
We might start with that comment in the spoiler section.
Spoiler alert!
So we will be right back with the spoiler section. Come back. It's going to be a really good conversation, not only on the Kneazle, Mrs. Norris part, but again, with Snape and Occlumency and a bunch of different things. So we'll be right back. Hey everyone, welcome back to the spoiler section of Chapter 24, Occlumency. And as I promised, we will pick up with the Kneazle conversation that Los_Shelby commented on with us. So essentially, a Kneazle is a very intelligent cat-like creature. So it's essentially a magical cat. The special thing about a Kneazle, it can detect unsavory or suspicious people and will react badly to them. Also, if it takes a liking to a witch or wizard, it makes an excellent pet for them. So JK has confirmed specifically that Crookshanks, Hermione's cat, is part Kneazle.
Which makes sense considering how Crookshanks reacted to Sirius when he was...
And Scabbers.
Yeah.
Yeah. It recognized both. It recognized Scabbers very much not innocent.
Bad person.
And Sirius
Good
very much
person.
is innocent.
Uh-huh.
So it reacted, Crookshanks reacted appropriately there. There is a note that says specifically, I think JK has mentioned on Twitter that Mrs. Norris is not part Kneazle.
Which is interesting.
However, she does have Kneazle-like qualities.
What I thought was interesting was it said a little tidbit about Mrs. Fig, that she breeds cats that are, like, crossed with Kneazles, which makes me just, like, in my fandom, in my headcanon, maybe she bred Crookshanks, and then Hermione got Crookshanks, and it's like, oh, look at that little connection there.
It's a potential connection that you can draw. Yeah.
Fun.
So that's kind of our like recap on the whole Kneazle thing. But yeah, it's an interesting comment. So thank you very much for.
I still say cats and their owners have a very special bond, but I guess I can give everyone that Mrs. Norris is a little extra special with Mr. Filch.
Mr. Filch, really? All right.
One other tiny thing that I've never caught before was what you said with Lupin and Tonks when they were whispering in the kitchen. This is like the very first tiny hint that they have a romance brewing.
I didn't take it that way.
Really?
I thought it was just. I don't get me wrong. I understand that in the blank space between words.
Yeah.
Like this timeline, that has to be occurring.
Yeah.
But I took it as strictly
order business. That's how I've always read it. This was the first time I was like, I wonder if because I think I've always read it as like there's lots of adults in the room, but this time I saw it and I was like, wait, it's just those two, and they're having a little whispered conversation, and they immediately shut up when the kids walk in. It could be romance.
It could be, and like I said, I understand that has to be going on
right
in this time, but I always read it as Order of the Phoenix business.
I have too, so I was a little...
Especially given their personalities, that entire ride, like Tonks is not in a romantic mood. She's in an all business mood.
She's acting like she's disguised to be like this old cranky grandma kind of...
No, she's in a mood, and I feel like she is described constantly as like watchful. She's keeping an eye out. She's looking in both directions. I think she pays the night bus guys a little extra to get their spot on time faster.
She does, yeah.
Like she is in a mood, and I don't know if she has like intel from the Ministry of Magic, like, hey, there's some things going on, or there's some movement, or there's whatever, but she is on it like today. There's not asking Harry, oh, you think the divination, like, maybe? Oh, do you think, like, there's no chit-chatting. She's like, boom, boom, boom. Like, let's get to business.
I don't know.
She just seems very focused in this particular scene.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I did want to mention something that Zach from Bladed Binge and I talked about last week, about the idea of Harry becoming a stronger wizard to come face-to-face with Voldy in later books, and his development as a wizard. And I feel like this branch of magic that we're talking about in this chapter could be a massive stepping stone towards Harry actually being able to go step for step, spell for spell with Voldy.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't necessarily a normal magic. Hermione's not diving into it. She knows of it, but Hermione's not
practicing. It's a particular branch, but I feel like Harry... And I get that Harry says that Snape's not really teaching him well, and we can get into that in a second, but I don't think Harry takes this as seriously as he should.
Right.
I think he needs to have a different mindset about it.
Which Dumbledore later acknowledges. He's like, I should have taught you. Clearly, I thought you and Snape could get over this, but clearly I was wrong.
Well, it's not like he's got a grudge, yeah, but like I said, he starts off this lesson fairly well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Snape, for whatever his faults, and he has many, he knows the importance to this.
Right.
He knows there's a problem here that Albus takes seriously, therefore I should take seriously.
Right.
And,
I mean, like, it's the same whenever I'm trying to help a kid that I don't particularly love. Like, I'm still going to do my job because that's what my job is.
And that's fine, but this is like a life or death thing.
Right.
Like,
right.
if Voldy finds a way into Harry, this endangers
Everybody.
everything.
Right.
So Snape does put a lot of his stuff aside, even literally putting it aside into a pensive, which we'll also get to. But he puts that aside and is like, no, I got to teach you this.
Right.
Like, let's focus. Let's get on this. And I don't know that Harry ever takes it the way he should. And I get that it's particularly difficult. It's a hard branch of magic. He almost left Grimmauld Place because he was afraid of Voldy entering his mind. Now he has a answer for that.
Right.
And he doesn't really take it as appropriately as he should have. This is one moment where Draco ends up one-upping Harry Potter because we learn later that it's not only Snape that's good at this. Other Death Eaters are also good at this. Bellatrix is a particularly accomplished Legilimens and Occlumency.
Right.
So she ends up teaching Draco how to do this, and Draco seems to pick up on it fairly well.
He sees the value of closing his mind. Harry sees the value of getting the insight into Voldemort's mind. And his natural curiosity, he can't overtake it, even though his better sense, if he were listening to Hermione, would say, no, shut that down. It takes a hard lesson for him to realize, like, I should have done it.
I think this is a step towards Harry becoming that formidable wizard that I think we all want him to be by book 7. And he doesn't get there, obviously. But at the same time, going back to what you were kind of just hinting towards, Harry doesn't want to do it for certain reasons. And you get into this kind of philosophical argument that him and Snape kind of tangentially get to of it's better to wear your heart on your sleeve, Harry's perspective, or Snape's perspective, no, you got to shut down this emotion because it's betraying you.
He said, fools who wear their hearts proudly on their sleeves, who cannot control their emotions, who wallow in sad memories and allow themselves to be provoked this easily. Weak people, in other words, they stand no chance against his powers, his meaning Voldemort.
Yeah. So, boil that down, Snape believes that emotion and emotional reactions, well, they'll betray you. They will betray you. And Harry's perspective is emotions make you stronger.
Well, it makes sense because from Harry's perspective, emotions, his mother's love, saved him from Voldemort. For Snape, showing emotion, showing that vulnerability would get him killed.
Do you take a side in this argument? Wearing your heart on your sleeve or shutting it down?
Of which is, like, the better to do?
I
mean, I don't know if there's a better way, but I know which way I tend to do, which is wear my heart on my sleeve. I'm a very open book, and it's sometimes it's a problem. What about you?
I tend to keep things a little bit more closer to the vest. I have a poker face about me.
I definitely do not.
I have more of a poker face. That doesn't mean that I don't like let my emotions out. I certainly do, because it's not healthy to keep them all piled in all the time. That being said, there is value to keeping some things closer to the chest and not like letting yourself fly off the handle every now and then.
I don't think I always.
The answer is both. The answer is both.
Yeah, like I don't think I always fly off the handle, but I think when I'm feeling a certain emotion, like I feel it very strongly, and I usually have to work through it before I can go focus on something else. It's harder to like compartmentalize it the way that Snape's able to.
Oh, I'm able to compartmentalize. That I'm able to do better.
I'm not good at that.
That I'm able to do better. But I think the answer is both. I think you need a balance of both. And you need to be able to discern what's the best moment for which strategy. And that's not easy. That takes practice, and it takes knowing yourself and knowing the situation. It's not easy to do. It takes training.
Right.
How do you feel about Snape's teaching of this particular class?
I feel like he did a good job of explaining the why he has to learn it.
Why is important.
And the what that it is. I think the how could have been developed a little bit more, but to be fair, it is one of those things where it's like you got to experience it first to kind of understand what it's going to feel like and what it's going to do to you. So it's kind of similar to like, I mean, when Lupin said that you're going to see a boggart and it's going to become your fear. Okay, cool. But I got to now see it to really understand just how much it might paralyze me or how extreme it might be. Same with like a Dementor. Like, okay, you're told it's going to suck the happiness from you. Okay, that's fine in theory, but until you actually experience it for the first time, you don't understand how cold and like how much it controls
drains you.
Yeah, like it completely freezes you. So I think this is one of the things where it's like, okay, you learn trial by fire, but I think after the first time of doing it, maybe he could have done a better job of like, okay, so now that you know what it feels like, here are some strategies that you can use other than just like a stinging hex out of nowhere that you weren't intending to try to clear your mind and block the emotions and defend yourselves against these thoughts, which I think the reason why he doesn't as much is because I feel like this for Snape is both like it's second nature by this point, and he probably also was good at it to begin with, and he's had so much practice with it.
So you think his natural talent for it is obscuring his ability to teach it?
Yeah.
I think you see some of that in his teaching of Occlumency. He's like, I'm telling you what to do.
Right. You're not listening.
Do it.
Right.
Like,
right. So I think it is. It's such a secondhand nature thing for him. It just comes so naturally. And to see Harry not do it, it's like, okay, well, why aren't you? And here we go. I guess let's try it again. Let's try it again until you are able to get it. But I think the explaining of like, okay, this is how I do it. See if maybe this strategy could work. I mean, if he wants to start bringing like, I don't know, like meditation or yoga or like bring in some kitties and like relax around them. I don't know.
Who do you think taught Snape this? Do you think Dumbledore taught Snape this when he gave him the assignment to
That's a good question.
Be the double agent?
I don't know, because it seems like a lot of the Slytherins especially seem to be practiced with this. I mean, I was reading up on the whole Occlumency thing in general, and one of the websites I was looking at said how Salazar Slytherin had been one, and it's thought that like the reason why the Sorting Hat is able to sort the students is because it can see into their minds. So Slytherin must have like
imparted some of his
like passed on that part of himself. So I don't know if maybe it was like he stumbled upon it on a book and was self-taught, or there was, I mean, we know Snape didn't have a very good home life, and maybe part of his way of escaping the reality of his situation was diving deeper into his mind and kind of closing off the arguments he heard with his parents and that kind of stuff. Or maybe someone in the Slytherin common room taught him someday. We don't really know. My guess would just be it's more of a self-taught thing, though. Try to cope with life at home.
I mean, I get that you can practice the idea of it at home, but I don't think you can't practice at home and then walk into.
Oh no,
Voldy.
You can't go into Voldemort.
You have to have someone
maybe in his. I mean, maybe once he turned from Voldemort after Lily died and went to Dumbledore, maybe Dumbledore helped him like fine tune it before being like, okay, you ready?
Theory is
you
one
actually
thing.
Ready for Voldemort? Okay,
this is
try.
one thing where theory is one thing, but you need to practice this.
I could see it as practicing with Dumbledore to the point of like, okay, if you can trick me, then I think you're ready for Voldemort.
Or if you could just throw me off.
Yeah.
So going back to my original question, does Snape do a fair job here teaching?
I think for his first time teaching this, as well as Harry's first time learning it, they both did the best that they could.
Very diplomatic answer. I do want to double back on something you were talking about just briefly. We don't have to get into a whole lot of it. The idea that Salazar Slytherin imparted his legitimacy skills into the sorting hat.
Yeah.
How do you think the other founders, or what do you think the other founders then imparted upon the sorting hat? Because obviously all four of the founders gave something of themselves to it to make it work the way it does.
Right. It's a good question.
So you're thinking Slytherin imparted some of his legitimacy skills to help with the actual sorting process.
Mm-hmm. I could see Ravenclaw is giving some insight to the actual learning ability, maybe of each.
Maybe she gave some personality to the hat.
Maybe
like some actual some AI, some artificial intelligence to the hat.
Gave him the ability to entertain itself by writing the poems every
The
year,
songs.
the songs every year.
And then obviously it was Gryffindor's hat, so he donated a hat. And then
here's my contribution. I'm helping.
and then Hufflepuff, we know, is a particularly gifted charms user, so maybe she's the one that brought the hat to literal life in a way.
Yeah.
So
you think it's charms? Yeah, it wouldn't. It wouldn't be transfiguration because it stays as a hat.
Correct.
Yeah.
Probably be a charm to make the hat actually talk. So next thing we're going to talk about in the spoiler section is that pensieve that Snape has in his office that he took some of his memories and put them into the pensieve.
I always get excited whenever the pensieve comes into play.
What memories do you think he put into the pensieve?
Anything related to Lily.
He's got a lot to protect.
Right.
I mean, he's got to shield Harry from the inner workings of both the Order and the Death Eaters, because if Harry knows any bit of any of that, it backfires because he's going to want to do something about it. Which that alone encompasses so much. Like, there's so much to just that.
See, I don't think he puts any of that in. And I think the reason is because he doesn't believe that Harry is going to be strong enough to break into that stuff. But we know he does put in the memory of taking the owls his 5th year and having Lily call him, or when he accidentally calls Lily a mudblood, and then Lily storms off, and then he's turned upside down and shows his underwear, and it's super embarrassing. That's the one memory, but I feel like he puts any memory about Lily into the pensieve because that of all his secrets is the one he wants to protect and keep from Harry as much as possible. Because he only pulled 3 memories from his brain. I don't know if it's you're able to clump all the memories together as much as possible, but he only put his wand to his head a handful of times. Unless he had preloaded the pensieve before Harry came in.
He could have. He could have.
One other final spoiler from this chapter. So Sirius gave him the package. Harry doesn't open it. And when he finally does, it's after Sirius has already died. And then it's oh, what's this? Oh, shoot, I remember what this is. And he pulls it out, and it's a mirror. Which, the fact that it's the size of a paperback book, and there was the note that said, James and I used to use this when we were in different detentions. We could talk to each other, still hang out still. It's okay. So essentially this mirror that's the size of a paperback book would be you FaceTiming with someone on an iPad. I don't understand how any of these teachers let them get away with doing that in their detention.
They're marauders. They invented the Marauders method.
I don't care. Every detention Harry has had has been the teacher hovering over him. No.
We're not talking about Harry. We're talking about Sirius Black, James Potter.
Okay, I'm 100% picturing them the way my students do, of just having this stupid mirror in their laps and being looking down and be at their laps. And it's
probably.
Okay, really? That's where your phone is. But no, so he opens it only when it has no use anymore. and then he throws it and it shatters, and then yes, he keeps the shard of the mirror, which does come in handy. But it's just like, this is such one of those plot things that just makes me mad. One, like, why did Sirius wait until now? All last year, he was struggling with communicating with him. We know he had to do it through the fire, and we later see when Harry tries it in the fire, it's very uncomfortable to stick your head in a fire and sit on your knees for like an hour. So if he had just been like, hey, I was home, went through my room, found my little mirror. Why don't you have this mirror and we can chat with each other, and it'll be a lot easier than sending owls that could be potentially like, you know, caught by people, and you'd have to resort to codes and all that. Like, this would have been so much easier. And then if he had this mirror that I'm sure Sirius had with him, like, at all times when Harry went back to Hogwarts, like, I'm sure he had it on him at all times. I was just waiting for the day when Harry would be like, hey, you know, like, I'm in the mirror. Like, I just get this like, melancholy feeling of Sirius had this mirror, had this gift that Harry never uses, but he probably had on him at all times, just in case. And then if he had used it, opened the package, then he would have never fallen trap. He would have never had to go to the Department of Mysteries. He wouldn't have had to break into Umbridge's office and stick his head in that fire. Creature wouldn't have been able to trick him. And it's a plot thing, but it makes me mad.
It's obviously a egregious error on Harry's behalf, because Harry has to at least open this thing, number one. Number two, he's got to realize that if you're afraid of luring Sirius out into the open, one way to do that, to not do that, is to talk to him.
Yes.
And this is, you know, a way to do that. And I get Harry's in a certain state himself. I understand that. But
it's just one of those times where it's like, oh, here's a thing, but become distracted from it and never go back to it until it's too late. He does that so often.
Yeah, it's a fatal flaw on his part. But I will say this. Communication's a two-way street. Sirius needs to do a better job of communicating, not only to him in that instance, but also, why can't you use the mirror?
I'm just imagining, like, Harry laying in bed at night, or, like, just Neville in his room by himself, and then, like, be like, Harry! Like, coming from Harry's trunk, and Neville being like, where's this coming from?
Seriously, though. I mean, like, why can't, you know, that happen? Unless it needs to be, like, I don't know the specific magic of this mirror, but...
He said he has to, like, speak his name into the mirror, and then it, like, shows up for the other person. It just reminds me of, like, FaceTiming somebody.
It's unfortunate that this mirror comes into play with Aberforth and not Sirius, because that could have changed the entire... And I get that that's the point. It could have changed the entire outlook of this series. Whatever. She had her reasons for doing it, and that's fine.
It's just a communication that Umbridge wouldn't have been able to break into.
I mean, all Sirius had to do was, like, instead of sending an owl, instead of trying the Flu Network...
Yeah, talk to me in the mirror.
Talk to me in this.
Yeah. Makes me mad every time I read it.
Well, on Elizabeth being upset, we will end the episode.
On Elizabeth being obsessed with little minute points of the book, like
get over the shrunken head. Get over the shrunken head. That you need to just get over. Anyway, we will end it here. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for commenting on the episodes on Spotify. Please continue to repost the episodes so we continue to grow. Please continue to like, review, comment, participate in our polls that are on Spotify. That really helps us and how we can interact with you guys and shape the conversation. If you look wherever you can find this podcast, there's 2 links. One, you can leave a voicemail and actually maybe become part of the podcast.
We'd love to hear from you.
We'd love to hear your voices. And then the other link is donate or support the podcast, and that makes it available to donate financially to us. And every little bit helps. It's a lot of effort and a lot of work that goes into putting these out. So we really appreciate any help that you're willing to give, whether financially or just reposting. So thank you guys for listening, and we will see you again next week.
Thank you for listening to Hogwarts, a podcast. If you like what you've heard, please click the subscribe button on your preferred podcasting app and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Hogwarts a Pod.